Happy Friday and welcome back to our podcast series entitled Intentional. This is Father Mark, and in this week we have had a conversation about prayer. Again, reminding us that the reason this week has focused on prayer is because the previous weeks focused on so many very personal things. And if we're going to allow the Lord to touch the deep places of our heart, then it's important for us to be confident in our capacity to share our hearts with Him. It's about times like this that I think it's really helpful for us to have some concrete teaching about how you can just share your heart with the Lord, and as we talked about yesterday, how you can hear the Lord speak back to you. Before we continue our conversation about listening to the Lord, just want to remind us where we were yesterday, right? We talked about living with an awareness in our spiritual life. Today I want to continue that conversation as we talk about how is it that we can hear the Lord speak to us. God's going to speak to us using the gift of who we are, right? So God made us. And so many times I don't hear God's voice as it's like a big booming voice, like Charleston Heston's voice or James Earl Jones's voice. You know, whatever the voice you think God is going to sound like, it's probably not going to sound like that, right? God's voice often sounds like our voice. God uses the gift of creation to reveal Himself to us. And so if we pay attention to our thoughts, our feelings, and our desires, then that's not the only way that God's going to speak to us, but those are the primary ways that we can at least start to pay attention to, you might say, to be aware of how God might reveal Himself to us. Let me give you an example. I woke up this morning and I said, I want some coffee. I convinced myself to get out of bed. I go to the coffee maker and I've got to make a decision. Do I want the blue K-Cup community coffee or do I want the yellow K-Cup community coffee? And I was the one driving those thoughts. I was the one that was pushing, generating, having the force behind the thought. Sometimes there are thoughts that I have that quote unquote just come to me. I'm not driving them. They just kind of like rise from my heart. Those are the thoughts that God is planting in us and God is using to reveal Himself to us. So sometimes our thoughts are from ourselves and sometimes our thoughts are from God. And that's a great way for us, if we can recognize it, that we can notice that God is speaking to us. Sometimes we might feel, quote unquote, led to read a scripture passage, or as we're reading a scripture passage, a word or phrase is going to, quote unquote, tug at our heart. God often uses the word that He has already spoken to reveal Himself to us. And so if we pay attention to our hearts and our interior life as we're reading scripture, there may be words or phrases that God is particularly lifting up to speak to us. Then thirdly, it's important for us to pay attention to our memory, right? We might, as we are in conversation with the Lord, remember something. And again, it's not us digging for that memory. It was almost that memory was presented to us. It could be a song that just comes to us and won't go away. Or if we just pay attention to our physical bodies, there might be a sense of peace in our gut. There may be a sense of warmth in our chest. Sometimes those physiological experiences can be engendered by the Lord, and there's actually something He's communicating to us in those. So that's why yesterday I said it's important for us to pay attention, to be aware of what's happening in our spiritual lives. God will speak to you, and He will speak to you today. And if we are aware, if we just pay attention to what He's doing, then we will be more disposed to hearing God. And imagine if in your life you were able to hear God. Pay attention today. He is communicating to you. And until our conversation unfolds tomorrow as we wrap up Lectio Divina, have a great Friday. God bless you.